It is 4:38 p.m. on a cold, rainy, gloomy Monday in Austin, and guess what? OU still sucks. Let's go, baby.
Here we go. Dylan Gabriel. He got there. His throw to the end zone. Incomplete. A generational win for Kansas. Finally toppling Oklahoma.
The Texas Longhorns come back home to DKR Stadium and absolutely dominate BYU 35-6. Maalik Murphy getting his first start, having himself a up and down game to be expected. The defense dominated BYU all game long. Absolutely harassed Kedon Slovis, shut that entire offense down. And while the Texas offense played an overall really good game, there are some major concerns and missed opportunities that we had in that game that we'll be getting into. All of that coming up in today's episode, so make sure you stick around. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So I know everybody wants to talk about and hear about, first thing, Maalik Murphy and his performance at quarterback, and I get it. And we will definitely get into that. We'll take a deep dive into that and talk about his game. It's only right that we talk first about the Texas Longhorns defense, and more specifically, that defensive line. Goodness gracious. Texas had 12 tackles for loss in the game Saturday against BYU. That is absolutely ridiculous. They held BYU to 3 for 14 on third downs. They forced 2 picks and a fumble, returning 2 interceptions deep into BYU territory, setting up short field for Texas. They only allowed 292 total yards, less than 300 total yards total offense. 197 through the air, 95 yards on the ground, and 9 different players had at least 1 tackle for loss. If that is not a dominant defense, I don't know what is. And just like what I predicted, the fact that this D-line didn't have to worry about a mobile quarterback, and the fact that our linebackers didn't have to worry about a mobile quarterback, they were able to pin their ears back all game long and go get after Kedon Slovis. And they absolutely did. Harassed him all game long. They absolutely shut down the run game. It was crazy watching T'Vondre Sweat just plug that middle. I felt like every other play, T'Vondre Sweat, his name was being called. He was all over the field. In my opinion, he was absolutely the most dominant player in the game, really. T'Vondre Sweat had a hell of a game. 7 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. But that stat line does not even come close to emphasizing how dominant he was throughout the entire game. Jalen Ford had himself a great game. Back to form. Back to his All-American form, which is something that we'd love to see. He had himself 11 tackles. He was great in the run game. Played very well in coverage, even though he didn't get really any opportunities at picks or anything like that. The defense overall played great as far as coverage is concerned. I think the thing that stood out to me the most in this game was the improvement of the secondary. In total, not just the safeties. The safeties played a lot better, and yes, Keaton Crawford and Michael Taft were out there on the field, and they had themselves some really good plays. Michael Taft had himself another interception. Terrence Brooks finally getting himself an interception, his first career interception. I thought that Ryan Watts coming back into the game, into the starting rotation in that secondary, really the defense, the secondary looked totally different in my opinion. So they looked really good. The communication was on point. The defense in total knew that they were not going to have to worry about a quarterback that was going to get outside of the pocket, and that really just simplifies the game plan. And let's be honest, the BYU offense was very lackluster. They don't have very many playmakers. Their best playmaker at wide receiver was Darius Lassiter, and he had himself some big catches, and we'll talk about that later on. He had himself a couple of big catches in the game, but overall, they just didn't have anybody that could really separate. And I think the biggest and most important adjustment that was made this week was the fact that our corners were playing press coverage. Nichols playing press coverage in man. Hardly ever were we playing off-man coverage, at least to the boundary side. To the wide side of the field, there tends to be the off-man coverage lining up about 6-7 yards off. The only complaint I think I have I had about the coverage in the game was on a 4th down that BYU had. It was 4th and 2, I believe, and they were in our territory. And Gavin Holmes is playing, or it's either Gavin Holmes or Terrence Brooks. Can't remember which one. I have to go back and look. But they're playing like 8 or 9 yards off the ball and allowed an easy 3-4 yard slant, completed and picked up the first down. That is not on the players. Again, that is a coaching problem, which I think that's still got to be something that's got to be addressed. Overall, though, the defense played so well, and they gave Texas's offense short field opportunities multiple times. Even though Texas had a couple of turnovers in the game offensively, the defense had 3 takeaways, 2 interceptions. Both of the interceptions by Michael Tapp and Terrence Brooks were returned over 40 yards deep into BYU territory. And then, of course, we had the fumble that was forced by Justin Finkley and Jamon Tapp, recovered by, I want to say it was Jere Bledsoe. 3 huge turnovers by the defense. We go +1 in the turnover margin. Anytime your team wins in the turnover department, it's a good indicator that you're probably going to win the game. You win in the turnover margin and you get more opportunities offensively, which thus leads to more points, should lead to more points, i.e. winning the game. One thing I loved about the defensive game plan overall was the aggressiveness. Not only did the players know that we weren't playing a mobile quarterback, the coaches obviously know we're not playing a mobile quarterback. PK was really aggressive. He sent a lot of blitzes. He was playing man coverage, playing tight man coverage and sending blitzes. He was trusting his athletes to be better athletes than the ones across from them. And that's what I talk about all the time. One of the things that great teams do is let their athletes be better athletes, and especially defensively. And I think they did that, and that really stood out all game long. We had a lot of players that really showed up in this game. Jahdae Barron had himself a hell of a game. I mean, he was making plays left and right. He was all over the field. Jalen Gilbo, I really like seeing Jalen Gilbo in that star position, and it just gives me even more of the confidence in the idea that Jahdae Barron should be playing in the deep secondary back as a safety and let Jalen Gilbo play that star position, because he had himself a really good game. Nearly had a pick, which I think would have been a pick 6. And you just really see the athleticism of Jalen Gilbo. I think that's what really stood out to me with him. His athleticism and his speed is definitely something that can be an advantage for us defensively. The coverage was so good and the defense was so aggressive. The fact that the defense completely stifled BYU's offense, it spoke volumes to the amount of talent that we have. There was no competition really, right? There was no competition offensively. We dominated them in every facet. Anthony Hill proved himself again. He's a freaking dog, and he's really coming along. I love the versatility of him because we can put him on the edge. One thing that I saw he did a couple times in the game was lining up. He's lined up at linebacker, right? But he's kind of like off the nose tackle and loops around the edges. And that was really getting home a couple of times. He got really close to getting sacks a couple of times. But more than that, he's getting a lot better in coverage, in zone coverage, which is really good to see. So between Anthony Hill and Jalen Ford, them two getting really good in coverage and being dominant in the run game is going to be very, very scary. The great thing about the game, and not only just about the game in total, but the defense and the team really overall, is that we still have not even seen the team's best performances, not defensively and especially not offensively. So when you consider that and just how dominant they've been and how great of a season we're having up to this point, that can be really scary, right? With that being said, let's go ahead and transition to the offensive side of the ball. I know, this is what everybody wants to talk about. This is what everybody wants to hear. Maalik Murphy, what do I think? What did we see? How do we feel about Maalik Murphy after his first start? And I'm going to tell you, I feel pretty good, right? I actually feel really good. And to be fair, I feel like I had pretty on-point expectations, right? What did I say? If you go back and watch the video from last week, some of the key factors were, as a game plan, making sure that Maalik Murphy had minimal opportunities to make mistakes, right? Because we knew, or I knew, that he was going to make mistakes. He's a freshman. This is his first game. He's being thrown into action. He's never had built a rapport with this team yet on the field in a live game setting, right? So to expect him to just come out and blow the doors off the BYU defense, regardless of how bad they are, is just unrealistic, right? I expected that he was going to have a turnover or two. I expected that he was going to make some freshman mistakes. And I expected also that Sark was going to build a game plan around him that was going to allow him to be successful. And all three of those things really checked out. Maalik Murphy went 16 of 25 for 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, and a fumble, which the fumble, to be fair, you can argue that that was just a bad play call, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But overall, he had a pretty solid performance. That is what that showed, is in his first start, he was at least serviceable. And to be fair, he had probably a drop touchdown by Xavier Worthy. You can argue that he probably underthrew it a little bit, a tiny bit, but it hit Xavier Worthy in his chest, and Xavier Worthy dropped it. So that could have been a 3-touchdown performance, a 200-yard performance easily. But what I said in my last video was I didn't think that we were going to need to have him throw for 200 yards. I didn't even think that we were going to throw for 200 yards. And I thought that the game was going to be won on the ground in the trenches, letting Jonathan Brooks touch the ball, letting CJ Baxter touch the ball, getting them carries and touches all game long. I thought that was a recipe for success. Minimizing the opportunities Maalik had to make mistakes, taking the shots downfield when they were available, which they did, and then running the ball. All of those things came to fruition almost perfectly, right? Maalik Murphy took his shots downfield, and he got 2 touchdowns. Speaking of Adonai Mitchell, incredible athlete. Like, you can't really say anything negative about Adonai Mitchell other than maybe his pass blocking or his run blocking. But the kid's body control, his hands, his hand-eye coordination, his understanding of routes and concept, like Adonai Mitchell, I think is, even though he's been a big target and he's made some big plays, I still think that he's really like a under the radar, incredibly gifted athlete. He had a great performance. So, but going back to Maalik, I thought overall I would give him probably a C+ as far as if I were to grade him. And here I'll give you some of the reasons why. Some of the bad things that we saw from Maalik was being flushed out of the pocket unnecessarily, not stepping up in the pocket, fading away from the pocket a lot, right? And throwing off his back foot. Funny enough, Quinn Ewers had a similar problem of throwing off his back feet and not stepping up in the pocket early on in his career, and even early on in this season. So to see that same kind of thing take place with Maalik Murphy is not surprising, right? Those are rookie things. Those are freshman mistakes that he's going to make, and he's going to have to learn about. The more that he plays, the more in the rhythm he'll get. The throws into traffic were sometimes egregiously bad. I think that, like I said in my last video, you can go back and look at all of these things. All of these things were things that I said. It couldn't be allow Maalik to catch the ball and just immediately throw the ball to his first target type of game. I knew that couldn't happen because I knew BYU's defense was going to be sitting on short routes. Obviously, they're going to be sitting on short routes. They know, just as we know, that Maalik Murphy's playing his first game, right? So the best way to get a quarterback into rhythm is throw little screen routes, little slants, short in routes, short routes that are high percentage completions, right? Well, BYU is obviously going to be sitting on those routes. And I thought that Sark did an excellent job of getting the defense to bite up, and just when you didn't think he was going to let Maalik Murphy throw it deep, Maalik Murphy went deep. And when Maalik Murphy threw the ball deep, and I'm talking about further than 15 to 20 yards downfield, he was pretty accurate. I can't lie. His throws to Jatavion Sanders, even though one of them was a blind throw into traffic that JT Sanders made an incredible NFL level one-handed grab on because he's a grown-ass man and he's playing against a bunch of little boys. Other than that one throw into traffic, for the most part, his down the field shots were very accurate and very well thrown. He had some really good touch on the ball today, which is something that we haven't seen out of him. I think he's got to get better in reading the field, going to his second and third reads and not just immediately throwing to his first. But the fading in the pocket, throwing off his back foot, and then throwing off your back foot into traffic, those things against a team like Kansas State, not only will we have the ball intercepted, but those will be pick sixes, right? And those are things that he's going to have to improve on if we're going to have a chance next week. But some of the good things that I saw in the game, his composure. Even when he made mistakes, even when he fumbled deep in our own or in BYU's territory, we're going into score, we're in the red zone and we turn the ball over. Even in those scenarios, even when he throws the pick that almost gets returned for a touchdown, he never lost composure. He went out there and he just played the next snap. And that's something you have got to love about a young quarterback. That shows enormous potential in his mental focus, right? He doesn't get too high or too low. He just lets the game flow naturally. And so I love to see that out of him. There were some shaky moments. Again, he's not always been the most accurate passer. That kind of stood out. You can see that he sometimes has problem locating certain passes, but overall I thought he did pretty well. I thought he controlled the offense very well, controlled the tempo really well. And more than anything, I thought he did a great job taking checkdowns when he needed to. There was a lot of good things, a lot of things that we can go into next week really happy about. And there's a lot of things going into preparing this week that Maalik can build on and that we can expect to see improve next week. So overall, while he didn't have an exemplary performance by any means, he did enough. And really what this win showed was that Texas is so versatile. They're so versatile. Like I said, we had less than 200 yards passing, over 200 yards rushing. Exactly like what I said was going to happen, though it didn't happen the way that I thought. I thought C.J. Baxter was going to be the one, have himself 85, 90 yards rushing, and J.B. have himself 100, 115 yards rushing. It didn't really happen that way. There were more backs that touched the ball. Of course, JB had himself 16 carries for 98 yards, which again, why are we only handing the ball off 16 times to Jonathan Brooks when he's averaging over 6 yards a carry? Still doesn't make any sense to me. We didn't need to be overly explosive in the pass game. We were very well balanced, right? And that is something that you love to see out of this team. Even with an inexperienced quarterback, we still found a way to be versatile, balanced, and still dominate. You have got to love that. The thing that I love the most is that we were complementary on all sides in all phases of the game. Passing, rushing, and defensively, and in special teams. Everything was very good. Everything was up to par, right? Everyone was playing complementary football. And like I said, one of the things that Maalik needed to have and not only Maalik, one of the things that Maalik needed to have a good game, the main thing that I said was going to be of utmost importance for Texas to have a good game offensively was the players around him needed to make plays. And my goodness, did they. Adonai Mitchell, 2 receiving touchdowns. If you go back and look at the deep throw that Adonai Mitchell scored on from Maalik Murphy, the corner post route that he ran, he broke that DB off so bad it was absolutely disgusting. Maalik Murphy threw the ball before Adonai even made his cut, and still Adonai had to wait on it. That tells you first off how much arm strength Maalik Murphy has. He threw a freaking floater up there. But my goodness, I can't say enough about Adonai Mitchell. Every time I see him play, I'm more and more impressed with him, right? Of course, Jonathan Brooks had himself almost a 100-yard game on the ground, had himself 40 through the air, had himself a dominant game again. I can't. Jonathan Brooks is the best running back in the country right now. Say what you want, argue with your mama. He's the best running back in the country. We had outstanding play from him. We had outstanding play from Adonai Mitchell. We had outstanding play from JT Sanders. Even though JT Sanders only had 4 receptions for 37 yards, he made huge catches. He made NFL-level catches. He made those defenders look like children, right? He is a grown-ass man, and he's a matchup nightmare for any team. Xavier Worthy, while he was not really, he wasn't a big threat in the pass game, he had himself a couple of really good catch and runs. His explosion
finally getting himself a punt return for a touchdown.
He is one of the best punters in the country. He's third in punting average at about 49 per game. And this one hung up in the wind a little bit. Here's Worthy, makes the first man miss. Straight ahead past the 40. Kicker to beat. There he goes. Worthy making a house call on a punt return. Xavier Worthy.
I mean, watching that kid go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 2.2 seconds is incredible. He literally, he looks like I don't even know. He looks like he's galloping out there. Like, he literally looks like an antelope. He's burning past everyone, and it's not even close. So he had himself, while he didn't have himself a great game offensively necessarily, he had an overall really, really good game. So I thought everybody played really good football and allowed Maalik Murphy to lead the offense and made the game a little bit easier for him because they were making big plays, right? With that being said, one of the things that allowed Maalik not only to have a good game, but also Jonathan Brooks and the rest of the running backs to have great games, the offensive line did its damn thing. And I know that there was a couple of mishaps. The screenplay that Maalik Murphy fumbled on, BYU really just sent more people than we were blocking. And again, bad coaching play call, but it is what it is. The O-line itself overall absolutely dominated. They were moving BYU's D-line off the ball like they were children. It was not even close. Jonathan Brooks had massive lanes to run through. And combining the block scheming with Jonathan Brooks' patience, my goodness. I think if he touched the ball 25 to 30 times, he easily has 150 yards rushing. He broke a big 38-yard gain where if he hadn't got tripped up, he probably would have scored. It was a really great offensive attack overall. I thought the game planning was really good. Sark did a great job of being balanced in the running and the passing attack. He didn't give Maalik Murphy too many plays downfield. He did allow Maalik Murphy to throw the ball downfield, give him some confidence, and that really allowed Maalik Murphy to get the offense going. So I just thought overall everything was great. Outside of course, the red zone. This is the one complaint that I have about this offense right now, and Steve Sarkisian. It has got to be figured out. Going 2 for 5 in the red zone against BYU is unacceptable. 2 goal line stands on 4th and 1 and on the 1 and 3 yard line, unacceptable, especially against a team like BYU. And I get that we have our backup quarterback in, but on those goal line stands in particular, one of those we were running the red cat. And we ran the red cat down to the 1 yard line and then didn't run it again and got stopped on 4th and goal. It doesn't really make sense to me at all. It doesn't make sense to me how we're not able to scheme up plays to gain us a yard on the goal line. It's really, really just boggling me. I don't know if we got to go ace formation, if we got to go shotgun ace, pistol ace, put in some big tight ends and have at least receiving threats on the outside. I don't know what we have to do, but something has got to change because obviously going big personnel packages is not working. It's too predictable. And all that teams are doing are just shooting the gaps as hard as they can, and they're stuffing us on the line. So that, I think, is the biggest disappointment of the game. 2 goal line stands against BYU is absolutely unacceptable. Because if we can't score against BYU, what makes you think we're going to score against anybody in the entire country on the goal line? We have 2 good athletes and 2 great players and 2 good of coaches to not be able to score from 1 yard out. That's all I'm going to say about that. And finally, just to wrap this up, because I know we're kind of getting long-winded here and there's not too much really to discuss in a dominant performance like that against a mediocre team. Some of the players that really stood out to me, in my opinion, Ryan Watts, of course, and Anthony Hill. Those 2 stand out mostly because Ryan Watts, having him back, our secondary coverage was immensely better. But Anthony Hill, he just has flashes. I'm telling you, he has those Micah Parsons flashes every single week, and he's just continuing to get better and really make his presence known on the field. When he hits people, even the announcers are scared by it. He hits people with so much force, it's ridiculous. Especially for somebody as young as he is, right? Other players that really stood out to me, of course, like I talked about earlier, Jalen Gilbo. Justice Finkley had himself a great game. Jahdae Barron, my goodness. Jahdae Barron is showing that between him and T'Vondre Sweat, they're arguably 1 and 2 the best players on our defense. Combine that with Jalen Ford. I think Jalen Ford is a clear-cut third. Jahdae Barron and T'Vondre Sweat. Those two are a close 1 and 2 for best players on our defense. Jahdae made some outstanding plays. Jamon Tapp. The more he sees the field, the more impressed I am by him. Even though he got that pass interference call, which honestly I don't think it was pass interference, he did a better job of getting his head around and looking at the ball than our cornerbacks do. And he chased that running back as a defensive end, chased that running back out the backfield and kept with them on the wheel route, and then made a great play and swiped the ball. He hit the ball with his hand. Now, the running back came back and bumped him, but he got his head around. I don't think that was a PI. I'm going to say that was a great defensive play. Jamon Tapp, the fact that you're a defensive end and able to cover a running back out of the backfield like that is actually insane. Then he goes on to get, combined with Justin Finkley, gets the fumble that Jure Bledsoe recovers in our own territory, right? BYU drove down and they were in our territory. Being able to get that turnover was crucial. He really stands out to me. Mo Blackwell had himself 5 tackles on the game, and he looked really explosive. He made some really good reads, and the way he shoots out of a cannon to make the tackle, he was really impressive to me. And then, of course, the number one person I think that was actually very surprising and pleasantly surprising was Jaden Blue. He only had himself a couple of carries, but the way he carried the ball, he was running with some ferocity. And then, of course, he hits that outside seam. And once he hits the outside, Jaden Blue is gone. Apparently, from what other players say, that Jaden Blue is one of the fastest players on the team. And he certainly showed it because he got up out of there. When he gets his opportunities, every time he's gotten an opportunity, he's made himself some big plays. So I certainly hope that he can get himself into the game a little bit more, along with Keelan Robinson. Because Keelan Robinson almost had himself a breakout as well. He was a shoestring away from taking about 65 yards to the crib on his first carry, right? So we have a ton of players standing out. And, of course, the final player I want to talk about here is Terrence Brooks. While he doesn't really show up in the stat line all the time, Terrence Brooks is our best pure cover corner in my opinion. He plays really well, especially when he can play up and get his hands on you. That's what he was coached to do, right? Terrence Brooks' dad was a former pro football DB as well, or DB coach, I believe, right? So he's being taught how to play man coverage and put your hands on the receivers. He's not being taught how to play off coverage when it's 3rd and 6, playing 9 yards off the ball. Right? He's not the best at that. He's good when he can get up to the line and put his hands on you. And he finally got himself a pick. But more than that, he just shut down his side all game long. So I thought he had a really great game. Overall, while there are some things that we need to improve on, of course, especially coming up into this Kansas State game, I thought we had a really solid performance on both sides of the ball. And I have a lot more confidence in Maalik Murphy going into next week. I think that for as little football as Maalik Murphy has played, not only in college, but even in high school, he only started for 1 year. He only played, 10 games before he broke his ankle? For him to come in and play as well as he did, I can't be mad at it. He's got a lot of things that can luckily be coached going forward into this Kansas State game, and we're going to need him to improve. Kansas State is no slouch, right? Kansas State is no slouch, and they just blanked a Houston team that nearly beat us. And not just blanked them, they beat them by 41 points, 41-0. So we have got that coming into DKR next week. This is not a team that we can take lightly by any means. Now, one thing that I do believe that Texas defense has the upper hand on this K-State offense. And I know we're going to see it, but I think our run defense is so damn good, it's going to really expose the deficiencies in the K-State offense come Saturday. But that is for another video. That is for another talk. We have a ton to go into about that game, and we will get into that later on in the week. For now, that is going to go ahead and do it for me as far as this video is concerned. Texas, again, beating BYU 35-6, handily dominating on both sides of the ball. Maalik Murphy having himself an up and down, but overall pretty solid performance. And yeah, we got a lot to look forward to going into this week. Anyways, man, I'm not going to hold you any longer. If you enjoyed the video, please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Be sure to hit that like button so we can spread the message and get it out there to everybody in the YouTube world. Turn on those notification bells so you never miss an episode or anything that we have coming out for you. Because remember, no matter where you look, there's no better place than MoBettaSports for your latest football takes. I am Mr. MoBetta, and I am out. Peace.